David Newton, Shannon, and then Tom, and we'll finish with Dustin.
Yeah, Jeff, David Newton, ESPN.com. Looking ahead to next week, do you, as a driver, wish there were more short tracks on the schedule, and do you think that would kind of fix some of what ails NASCAR if there were?
Well, again, I don't really understand the ills. It doesn't. Not real clear to me. But I think short tracks have a real place in our sport. I think that the history is, part of the history of our sport. What's made our sport great was the short tracks. And I don't care what you say. There's no way you can have as exciting of a race on a 2-mile racetrack as you can on a 3/4-mile racetrack. It's lap for lap. Now, you can have the last lap, but lap per lap, you're going to have more action on a short track than you do on a big track. And, I think that the tendency to want to build bigger racetracks there, for a while, everything built was big. I think it would have been really cool to build some smaller racetracks. I mean, that's what our sports have grown up on. And that's where the racing action is much more intense, the smaller the track gets. So I like the small tracks. I really think they have a major place in the sport, and I think that they enhance the racing, and which ultimately, people want to see. Well, I've always thought that the drivers that are really good at Michigan think that you got to be a really good driver at Michigan to do well. The drivers that are real good at Watkins Glen think you got to be a really good driver to do good at Watkins Glen. I think that it's really hard to say that any kind of track is more of a driver's track than anything else. It's a skill that's required to run Martinsville. Many of those same skill sets you do here, but there's some that you don't. And the very best can do it all. And some people are really good at some things and not at others, and then there's some that are good at less things. So I don't want to say you have to be a better driver, but it is a different skill set.
We'll go Shannon, Tom, and in with Dustin.
Shannon Spake, ESPN. Kevin was just in here, and he was saying how you cannot win this championship in 1 week, but you can definitely lose it in 1 week. How do you think just the competitiveness of this chase, how does that affect you guys on the racetrack, knowing every week it can change so much?
Well, the chase is intense, man. It's a great experience. It's when they drop that green flag at Loudon, it's a feeling that it's really hard to describe. The intensity level goes up. The consequences of bad days, that is felt much more. The advantage of having good days is felt much more. It's it's just intense, and I think Kevin's right. I think that and you've seen it. Those guys, the top 3 guys have been the most consistent, and they've run well and they've been consistent, and so that's why they are where they are. So I believe Kevin's right. I think that you've got to in a race that's really, really close, mistakes you pay a big price for mistakes. I will say, though, you just don't know what mistakes are going to be made, and you don't know what the deal with Kyle Busch and David a couple weeks ago. I mean, who would have thought of that? You just don't know what's coming. So certainly the tighter it is, the more mistakes are felt. But it's not always a mistake that you make. Sometimes something else happens that you can't control, and that can have a huge bearing on the point race as well.
We'll go Tom right here on the front, and then we'll end with Dustin.
Hi, Jeff. Tom Jensen, Speed.com. Jimmy Johnson came in here last year, and in about the first 2 minutes of his availability, said, yeah, Chad and I talked, and we decided we want to lead every practice, lead the most laps in the race, qualify on the pole, and win the race. And he went out and did all those things. We hear drivers come in all the time say, well, we just got to concentrate on our own deal, focus on what we do, not pay attention to what anybody else does. But when somebody does something like that, how much does it psychologically affect the other teams, and how much intimidation and mental games go on during this thing?
Well, it's interesting because whenever I hear Denny Hamlin talk, he talks about Jimmy Johnson. If you think about post-race, pre-race, and what I read, there's always comparing himself to the 48. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying it's right. I think that they've looked at the 48, and evidence suggests that they probably should do this, and said that's who we got to go beat, and we got to compare ourselves to them, and when they do something, we got to do it better. And he constantly is talking about the 48. That's that team's way of getting pumped up, of addressing where they need to be better, of doing the things that they need to do, and it's worked very well for them. There's other teams that really don't pay any attention to the 48 at all and just focus on what they're doing. Which, by the way, I'm sure that's what the 48 is doing. I'm sure the 48's not looking at the whatever team and saying, "Hey, we got to go do this." It's you gotta do what you gotta do to be the best you can be, and whatever that is, whatever motivation that is, whatever psychological ploys that is, and you just go do it. But it's different for everybody. I don't think teams and drivers are intimidated by words. I think that results are what get people's attention. And somebody can talk all they want to talk. There's a fine line between arrogance and confidence. And, sometimes the more you talk, the bigger hole you dig yourself. So I think results are what people pay attention to, not necessarily words.
Final question, Dustin.
Dustin Long, Landmark Newspapers. Jeff, related to that, looking at Martinsville, Denny and Jimmy have won the last 8 races there. 3 times they've gone 1-2. Now, certainly we've seen times where one guy's been dominant at a track, but here are 2 guys that have pretty much done it. I know you had a run at Denny in the spring race right there till your flat tire. What do the results say? How does that impact the garage, or how do people need to watch those guys, or cannot help avoid watching those guys because of what they've done at that track?
Well, your competition sets. If we were here practicing and that we were the only ones here, we wouldn't know how well we were doing. Now, I could come in and say the car drives good, the car feels good, whatever, runs a 31 flat. The minute that everybody else gets here, now you have something to shoot for. So now the evidence is there. This is point blank how you're doing. If you aren't willing to look at where you are in reference to your competition, then you can't improve. So if you're not willing to say, well, the 48's won the last 4 championships, and those 2 teams have won the last 8 races at Martinsville, if you're not willing to look at that and accept it, that they're doing a better job than you, then you're destined to fail. Now, you can take several approaches. You can say, well, we can't win because they're really, really good. Or you can say, if everything falls their way, maybe we can win. Or you can go to work. And I think the majority of the garage goes to work. I mean, I think that I really believe there's a big misconception with the media that when you see the 48, there's some sort of intimidation factor. There's a lot of respect for them, as it should be. But I don't think it's an intimidation factor. I think it's that they're really good at what they do, and you got to be on your A game to beat them. And that's how you gauge yourself. And so you got to, like I talked about with Denny, I think that they've looked at that, and they know who they have to shoot for and who they have to beat, and that's how they're gauging themselves, and rightfully so. So I think when you go to a racetrack and you see a team that's been very, very successful, you know that you're going to have to beat them. But you don't go into that race knowing that you're beaten. You go into that race knowing that you're going to have to step it up to match their results or to better their results. So, respecting someone and paying attention to what they're doing with admiration is not being intimidated. It's being smart. So I think now Earnhardt was a different deal because he'd wreck your ass. When you saw him coming, it was not that it was necessarily intimidation, but you knew, well, I got something different I got to deal with. Jimmy's not that kind of driver. Jimmy's very, very, very fast, and he's very, very, very smart, and he doesn't take anything from anybody. But he's not the kind of guy that's just you got to deal with from that standpoint. You got to deal with him because he's really, really fast, and he's really, really good at what he does. So I don't know. When I think of being intimidated and those things, I think about if I played football and Lawrence Taylor was coming after me, I'd be intimidated. But I don't get intimidated because somebody's faster than me. I just know I got to go off and try to get faster, and that's that's the best way. And it's a long answer, but that's the best way I know how to answer it. You can respect your enemy. You really can respect your enemy, and you have to appreciate what they're doing to respect them.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Good luck this weekend at Charlotte.